Discover the hidden truth. What Vikings did to captured women that was infinitely worse than death. Claire Johnson stood in the library basement, the musty air thick with undiscovered stories. Hidden among the dusty papers, her fingers brushed against a brittle document, and a chill ran down her spine. The words echoed in her mind, vividly graphic accounts of pain and suffering, stories of women forgotten by history. Each tale she read ignited an unsettling fusion of dread and curiosity, mirroring her own professional battle for recognition in a field overshadowed by men. The realization that there were truths beneath the polished narratives clashed with her desire for acceptance. She was torn between the need for approval and the haunting call of the past. The weight of stagnation pressed on Claire's shoulders. She stared at her reflection in the old mirror, seeing not just the historian but a woman plagued by insecurities. Would revealing the darker legacies of Viking raids propel her forward, or would it only push her further into obscurity? Her ambitions felt stifled by the old boys' club at the museum, dismissing her groundbreaking research as mere sensationalism. As she wrestled with these fears, questions bubbled to the surface. Was it worth fighting for something that could crumble her reputation? Could she summon the courage to unveil the horrors connected to her own ancestor, Astrid, a woman whose fate wove through the threads of terror and trauma? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Claire's heart raced. As tensions deepened, she sought solace in her mentor, Dr. Samuel Taggart. He had faced the same doubts, yet he remained unwavering in his passion. Together, they dove deeper into the documents, sketching a narrative that honored the voices long silenced. Would the urgency of the past redeem her present? Or would the backlash from the Historical Society threaten to destroy everything she had fought for? With each day spent in research, her resolve strengthened. Yet the specter of fear loomed larger. What if she became the target of scorn? In a pivotal meeting at the Historical Society, Claire's palms were clammy as she prepared to present her findings. The room filled with skeptical gazes, dismissive chuckles piercing the air like knives. The honor of Point Hollow now lay vulnerable on the table, the stakes higher than she realized. As she detailed Astrid's fate, hearts swelled with anger. Her audacity to challenge their sanitized legacy brought forth an unsettling energy. A knot tightened in her stomach, the thread of testimony weaving through generations. Could she endure this onslaught? Did the truth even matter if it promised to splinter their community into shards? As Claire faced the wrath of tradition, she wondered about her own family's legacy. Torn between pride in her ancestry and the scars of their history, she felt an unbearable weight pressed down. The air shifted around her, alive with emotion, and as the opposition gathered strength, she stood resolute, each heartbeat a reminder of the stake she held in both truth and love. As the sound of her own thoughts screamed through her mind, she grappled with the question that could fracture her identity. Would her pursuit of the truth sever her ties to her family, or would it forge a new path to healing? The confrontation had cracked open a door that Claire feared might never close. As the meeting recessed, she felt the oppressive weight of judgment in the air. Each piercing gaze felt like a physical blow, forcing her to question if she had stepped too far into the shadows of historical revisionism. She had challenged narratives that had remained untested for generations, and now she was left wondering whether she had become the very thing she despised, a voice trying to erase another's truth for the sake of validation. Dr. Taggart approached her in the quiet aftermath. "You did well, Claire," he said softly, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his concern. "You opened a dialogue that needed to be had, but I know it will not be easy to bear the weight of their anger." Pushing back her emotions, Claire sought clarity amidst the chaos. "But did I lose them?" she whispered, barely able to hear her own dismay over the static of doubt reverberating in her mind. "Did I lose my integrity by exposing these truths?" He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Truth is often messy, and it doesn't always lead to acceptance. But what's important is how you choose to navigate this landscape moving forward. You must remain steadfast in your authenticity. With a determined nod, she began to forge a plan. The backlash had only fueled her need to dig deeper. What if she could turn this storm into an opportunity? She envisioned a more thorough exposition interviewing descendants of Viking raiders, drawing parallels to contemporary issues. If she could weave a narrative reflecting inherited trauma, she might illuminate true understanding rather than tearing the fabric of her community apart. Days turned into weeks as she immersed herself in research, her mind racing with the implications of her findings. The more she learned, the more she saw the complexities of betrayal and loyalty within her own family history. The stories of women like Astrid were not only narratives of sorrow but also a tapestry of resilience that rippled through generations. As she stepped into the library one morning, the familiar scent of aged pages igniting her resolve, Claire came across a set of letters hidden among the archive's personal correspondence between a Viking warrior and a captured woman. The words dripped with longing, illuminating a bond formed in the shadows of violence, a facet of history often overlooked. Caught in the rush of emotion, she realized that these documents revealed more than the painful past, they depicted love and humanity amidst horror. A rush of exhilaration surged through her as a plan crystallized in her mind. She would not just present the facts, she would create a narrative that reflected the humanity behind the statistics, the face behind the trauma. Claire was ready to confront the society once more, this time armed with narratives that humanized the complexity of their shared history. She would write an article detailing her discoveries and present the true voices that composed the chorus of suffering and survival. The storm of backlash might be inevitable, yet she now understood that the pursuit of truth was not simply a journey for recognition, but rather a path toward understanding. Yet the deeper she dug, the more she felt the shadows of her family looming. What if the revelations she unearthed affected her loved ones? As she sat with her computer, fingers poised over keys, a wave of anxiety washed over her, shaking her determination. How would her findings rewrite her personal story? And before she could find the answer, her phone buzzed, flashing an ominous message: "You're going to regret this, Claire." The ominous tone sent chills down her spine, a reminder that truth often reaps dangerous consequences. The moment of truth had arrived, and she knew her journey had just begun. Claire sat in her dimly lit apartment, the soft glow of her laptop illuminating the concerned lines on her forehead. The message loomed ominously above her, heavy with threats and dread. It was a stark reminder that the pursuit of truth came with consequences, consequences that might ripple beyond her control and touch those she loved. Taking a deep breath, she leaned back, seeking a calm center. She knew she had ventured into uncharted territory, but pursuing history demanded bravery, especially when confronting the shadows cast by familial ties. The rush of ideas filled her mind, yet they were accompanied by uncertainty. What if unveiling the harsh truths of the past tarnished her family's legacy? She considered her great-grandmother, a woman defined by silence about her own haunting history. Would her findings force a re-examination of the narratives carefully crafted over decades? Claire's hands trembled over the keyboard as she began to type. For days, she dissected the letters she had found, examining every sentiment and nuance. The emotions trapped within those pages began to fuel her resolve. She scribbled notes about the complexities of love amidst despair, of choices made in the throes of survival. Yet questions nagged her: could she navigate the moral quagmire of sharing another's pain, especially if her family's stories entwined within it? On one particularly restless evening, she decided to confront her fears head-on. She reached for her phone and dialed her mother's number, her heart pounding with each ring. When her mother's familiar voice greeted her, Claire sifted through her thoughts, weighing every word. "Hi, Mom. Can we talk?" The back and forth of their dialogue shifted between familial warmth and the cool surface of discomfort. Claire delicately broached the subject of their ancestry, treading lightly upon the subjects that had always been taboo. Her mother's response was cautious, the hesitations echoing Claire's own anxieties. "I've heard the whispers about what you're doing," her mother finally said. "You need to be careful." As the conversation deepened, Claire felt a mix of longing for acceptance and the gnawing desire to challenge the status quo. The stories from those letters loomed heavier in her mind, pulling at the frayed edges of understanding. She recognized that to honor her lineage, she needed to tell the unvarnished truth, no matter how painful. It was a gamble, but Claire had always thrived on challenges. As days turned to weeks, her article began to take shape, morphing from mere analysis into a heartfelt narrative that wove voices from the past into the fabric of her present. Yet she became increasingly aware of figures lurking in the shadows of her journey. Former colleagues began to voice their concerns more openly. Whispers of betrayal filled the air, and suddenly, a once supportive academic circle began to fracture. One afternoon, as she walked toward her office, an uncomfortable tightness coiled in her stomach. Dr. Taggart approached, his expression a mixture of sympathy and apprehension. "Claire, there are murmurs about your project. People are worried about the implications." Her heart raced. Confrontation loomed on the horizon, and she needed to make a choice, either stand firm in her beliefs and continue to uncover the truth or retreat into the safety of silence, the very thing she despised. "Dr. Taggart," Claire replied, steadying her breath, "I can't back down now. Something vital is at stake." As the tension thickened, the clock ticked steadily. Claire realized she was on the brink of irrevocable change, both professionally and personally. The path ahead was fraught with risk, yet she began to see the outlines of her true self sharpen against the tumult. Embracing the uncertainty might just be the catalyst she needed. But just as clarity dawned, a familiar dark shadow crept back into her consciousness. The message she had received echoed in her thoughts: "You're going to regret this, Claire." With renewed determination yet tinged anxiety, she pondered who would be waiting in the wings and to what lengths they might go to protect their secrets. The future remained uncertain, but she was not afraid, she was ready to face whatever storm might come. As she took a step forward, a sudden realization struck her: revealing her family's truth could also lead to unexpected discoveries about her own identity. Would the unfolding narrative finally bring her closer to understanding herself? And with that thought, she knew the moment had come to reach deeper, unearthing her own hidden truths and confronting the complex fabric of her lineage. Claire awoke the next morning to an unsettling stillness, her resolve stealing against a backdrop of anxiety. The sun crept through her curtains, casting shadows on the walls that felt more like prison bars than comforting silhouettes. She had come to a critical juncture in her journey, one that blended her academic ambitions with the heavy burden of her family's legacy. After a quick breakfast, she sat at her desk, the laptop's glow a reassuring beacon amidst her swirling thoughts. Moving to the kitchen, she brewed a cup of coffee, inhaling its rich aroma as she paced around her tiny living space. Each step resonated with intent. She was preparing to delve into the unknown, ready to excavate the buried truths that shaped her family narrative. But even as she gathered her resources, the tension remained palpable in her chest. Today was the day she would confront her family's history not just in words, but in action. Sitting at her desk, she opened her notes, pages filled with fragmented sentences, impressions, and thoughts shaped by the letters that echoed pain and survival. What did courage actually look like? Was it in the words she published or the stories she uncovered? Or was it in the way she received the truth, no matter how painful it might be? Claire considered the lessons she learned from her great-grandmother's silence. There was strength in not speaking, too, but as Claire sifted through her ancestors' experiences, she realized that silence and truth were not mutually exclusive. To tell her family's story, to weave the truth into something greater, required her to balance both, casting light into the darker corners where memories had hidden. She drafted an outline for the article, focusing on the interplay of love, betrayal, and the sacrifices that forged her lineage. Each section felt like a lifeline, an invitation to dig deeper. But the voices of concern echoed in her head, projecting shadows on her resolve. Dr. Taggart's careful words reminded her of the stakes involved. The thought of the colleagues who once championed her suddenly filled her with doubt. Were they now shrouded in obsession with maintaining the idealized image of history? Was she becoming too wrapped in her own ambition, risking the ties that connected her to her academic world. She pushed these thoughts away. Claire was not one to shrink from adversity. As the day dragged on, she decided to visit the local archives. The scent of old paper beginning to permeate her senses excited her. With each fragile document she examined, she felt history come alive, shooting twinges of clarity through her mind. Yet an inexplicable urgency nagged her. What awaited her in these time-worn pages? The opportunity to gain insight into her grandmother's life weighed heavily on her, yet also threatened to unearth secrets she wasn't prepared to handle. In the musty silence of the archives, Claire stumbled upon a peculiar ledger cataloging names and events, some familiar, but many that felt shockingly alien. Names of women from different backgrounds and the markings next to them caught her eye. The symbols hinted at stories she hadn't encountered before, leading her heart to race with the possibility of revelations waiting to be explored. Suddenly, it dawned on her, this was more than an academic endeavor. It was a responsibility, one that could empower her to redefine what it meant to be a voice for the voiceless, to put words to suffering that had too long been shrouded in silence. The thought ignited an ember within her, awakening a fierce determination. Yet, another message flickered to life in her mind: "You're going to regret this, Claire." Uncertainty arose once more, pushing against her newfound determination. Who was it who sought to forewarn her? The disquiet reverberated through her thoughts as she left the archives, the ledger tucked safely in her bag, harboring potential. As she emerged into the daylight, Claire felt a gust of wind that stung her cheeks, reminiscent of the unexpected turns that lay ahead. Each step was an act of resistance against the fear brewing within. What would she discover in the uncharted territories of her ancestry? Would the past reveal the truth she sought or drag her deeper into unforeseen darkness? These lingering questions accompanied her as she returned home, aware that the next phase of her journey awaited a confrontation with the lineage she longed to understand but feared to unveil. Claire knew one thing: her family's secrets would not remain hidden much longer. The moment to face those hidden truths was approaching. Under the fluorescent glow of her desk lamp, Claire hovered over the ledger, each flickering shadow magnifying the weight of the moment. The faded ink began to blur, and the names spilled out like echoes of forgotten lives. It was no longer just a task. This was her ultimate test, a confrontation with the threads of her family's past that had been frayed and concealed. In the weeks to come, Claire dedicated herself to the ledger, translating cryptic symbols and weaving together the stories that hinted at violence, resilience, and sometimes tragedy. With every name, the urgency of her mission sharpened. What began as mere research morphed into a personal quest. She felt the weight of each story on her shoulders, understanding that her voice, her perspective, could serve as a conduit for those who had long been silenced. Yet, she also battled an undeniable tension. Instinctively, she hesitated to expose the dark passages of history, fearing the repercussions not only for her work but for her own sense of self. In quiet moments, her internal dialogue played out fiercely. Could she truly navigate the abyss of her family's past without losing herself? Each scratch of her pen was a reminder of the responsibility she carried, yet with each new insight, her confidence flickered alive. The shadows of self-doubt started to dissipate when she uncovered the story of a great-aunt, a woman fierce and proud, whose resilience echoed through time. In archival newspaper clippings, Claire found her name associated with community activism, a voice that fought against oppression. This revelation sparked a fire within her. Claire realized her great-aunt's narrative was not just one of survival, it was also one of empowerment. Every act of courage penned in those pages fueled Claire's resolve. She felt an odd kinship with this ancestor she had never met, as if their fates were intertwined across generations. Fueled by this sense of connection, she approached her article with renewed vigor. Yet, with curiosity came another layer of urgency: the discovery that some of the names belonged to women with histories tangled in her own family tree. Were these women merely victims, or were they powerful agents in their own right? The grayness of her academic ambitions blurred into something richer, more personal. Each day, Claire wrestled with the implications of her discoveries. She crafted her article with a blend of reverence and scholarly critique, yet her reflections often led her back to the very heart of the matter. What did it mean to bear witness? Late one night, her fingers danced across the keyboard, collating research while simultaneously wrestling with emotional turbulence. However, a creeping sense of dread buried itself beneath the excitement of unearthing family truths. What if she stepped beyond the bounds of academia and dragging to light secrets meant to stay hidden? Was it ethical to share narratives of trauma that had not been her own? The tension coiled tighter, and the question, "What will they think of me?" echoed relentlessly in her mind. This was not just about individual stories, it was about legacy and identity. With each keystroke, she pondered the craft of storytelling, the moral responsibilities it entailed. What weight did her words carry? Claire halted and took a deep breath, the silence wrapping around her like a thick fog. The answer lay somewhere in the balance of truth and understanding, empathy and responsibility. It was not just about her journey, it was about honoring those who came before her through careful, conscious articulation of their experiences. She knew the time had come to face a pivotal decision: reveal the complete truth or shield parts of it in the name of protection. As dawn broke, illuminating her cluttered workspace, she knew she was at an intersection. The click of the keyboard felt like war drums as she prepared to publish her findings. Then, the message flickered back in her mind: "You're going to regret this." Claire sensed the growing danger of unveiling such labyrinthine histories, but she also recognized the potential to redefine her family's narrative. The confrontation with her past was inevitable, and with the ledger beside her, she steeled her resolve. Would she draw the veil back fully, risking unknown consequences for the sake of authenticity? The decision loomed ahead, equal parts terrifying and exhilarating, signifying a now or never moment. And just as she poised to make her choice, a knock at the door shattered her concentration, sending ripples of tension through the air. Who was it that sought to interrupt this pivotal moment? Was it a supportive presence, or an unforeseen adversary ushering in chaos? The answer to that question would unravel everything. Claire's heart raced at the unexpected knock, a thunderous distraction from the turmoil that raged within her. She glanced toward the door, the possibilities swirling in her mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. Was it her mentor seeking insight on her progress, or a family member with unresolved stories that demanded to be told? Steeling herself, she rose from her chair, the ledger still open on her desk, a testament to her labor and the stories she unearthed. Her body felt heavy, a mix of dread and anticipation anchoring her feet to the floor momentarily. She took a deep breath, trying to quell the surge of emotion welling inside. Whatever awaited her beyond the door, it felt like destiny demanding to be acknowledged. Swinging it open, she faced a figure she had not expected: her mother, eyes shimmering with unshed tears and a storm of unspoken history. "Claire," she whispered, her voice barely breaking through the silence of the morning. "Mom." Claire's uncertainty mirrored the flicker of surprise in her mother's expression. "What's wrong?" Without a word, her mother stepped inside, closing the space between them. Claire's instinct told her this was more than a routine visit, it was a moment laden with significance. The ledger seemed to radiate an energy of its own, as if attuned to the emotional frequency hanging in the room. "I've been thinking," her mother's voice trembled faintly, and Claire felt the gravity of their shared history tugging at her heartstrings. "About our family. About the stories you're digging into." Claire nodded, shivers rushing down her spine as she realized her mother had come not just to check on her, she had come to confront the trepidation that lurked in the shadows of their lineage. "I think I have to publish this. It's important. It could change how we understand our family," she declared, a heat rising in her chest. Her mother's face twisted in a mix of frustration and sorrow. "You don't understand the weight of those stories, Claire. Some of them are meant to stay buried." The outburst echoed around them, feeling both like a protective warning and a misguided plea against the very essence of Claire's quest. The tension in the room thickened like fog curling at dawn. "I need to honor them, Mom. These women are ancestors, they deserve to have their stories known. They stood against so much adversity." Claire's voice became fierce, fueled by the courage she had extracted from the pages of her research. But her mother shook her head, the sadness flaring into alarm. You might think you're honoring them, Claire, but you might just be opening old wounds. Some secrets are meant to protect us, she insisted, stepping back as if the truth of her words were a physical barrier. Claire's heart sank, torn between the fervor ignited by her great-aunt's resilience and her mother's anguished concerns. Could it be true? Was she acting honorably, or was this an act of jeopardy, one that could unravel their family ties even further? Mom, what happened? What stories did you keep from me? Each question pushed Claire deeper into a labyrinth of uncertainty. Just as she anticipated clarity, the urgency of her mother's silence roared like a sudden thunderstorm, daring her to stumble into the shadows of understanding. For the first time, Claire realized how much she didn't know about her lineage. The ledger, the research, it was much more than academic to her, it was a lifeline. But here in this moment, with her mother before her, a new wound seemed to crack open. Some things should stay hidden for a reason, Claire. Her mother's tone softened, eyes pooled with unshed tears. Are you ready to face what that might mean? With the weight of generations gripping her soul, Claire felt her resolve gradually quivering, as if the foundation she had built was being eroded by unforeseen currents. What lay ahead would require not just courage, but an acceptance of a legacy far more complex than she had ever imagined. Maybe I'm not, Claire admitted, breathless. But I have to know. And just like that, she found herself at the nexus of revelation and resistance, standing on the precipice of decisions that could shift the course of her family's story forever. Behind the raw, scattered remnants of her family tree, a darker truth lurked, one that threatened to redefine everything she believed. Was she ready to face it? And would she find her mother standing by her side, or would this quest break them apart once and for all? The answer wasn't just about the ledger anymore, it was about her family, identity, and the very fabric of who she was becoming. Claire stood motionless in the lingering silence that followed her mother's poignant declaration. The ledger loomed on the desk, a tangible reminder of her aspirations clashing violently with her family's fears. The stories she had unearthed felt like fragile petals, blooming in a dark forest of untold histories, yet they were met with a storm cloud that cast doubt over her convictions. Mom, Claire ventured cautiously, attempting to break through the barrier of dread. What happened to those women? Why are their stories too painful to share? She felt her pulse quicken, a mixture of desperation and determination coursing through her. The questions spiraled relentlessly in her mind, demanding answers. Her mother shifted, the tension palpable, yet the sadness nestled in her features spoke volumes. Sometimes, she began slowly, the truth brings more pain than relief. I thought by keeping it hidden, I was protecting you. Claire's gut twisted. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about courage and legacy. And what about honoring them? Wouldn't knowing their truths help us heal, not just as individuals but as a family? The challenge lay heavy between them. Claire felt her identity hang in the balance, pushed and pulled by conflicting loyalties. She wondered how many other legacies had been buried under layers of fear and shame. The realization struck her, the very act of writing their stories was a form of resistance, a rebellion against silence. Writing can be a double-edged sword, her mother whispered, still receding into a protective resolve. You must understand that not all words can lay dormant comfortably. Some provoke. Claire considered this. She grappled with the notion that her desire to expose her family's past could devastate connections she had always held dear. Yet, this internal struggle ignited a fire within her, a need to confront the discomfort, to leverage it for insight and growth. Then show me, Claire urged, her voice steadied by a newfound conviction. Help me understand. If we move forward together, we can transform this pain into strength. Her heart raced at the thought of unveiling truths and stitching together the frayed edges of their history. Her mother hesitated, visibly torn. You might not be prepared for what you could uncover. The past is full of darkness, Claire. The stories of our ancestors are often steeped in suffering. Shadows of resentment and reluctance danced in her mother's eyes, hinting at fragments of a narrative that had long been suppressed. But if we hide from it, we're only allowing that darkness to loom over us, Claire insisted. I risk losing you if I go alone, but together we could reshape how we view our family. Sharing these stories could spark resilience rather than perpetuate hurt. Trailing her finger over the ledger, she felt the weight of decision pressing down, an invitation toward personal evolution. If her mother could share the unsettling truths, perhaps Claire could harness them as sources of empowerment, strategies to reinforce familial connections rather than sever them. A flicker of understanding passed between them, illuminating Claire's ambition. She wasn't just a storyteller on an academic pursuit anymore, she was a bridge-maker, seeking unity through the fragmented shards of history. Let us reclaim the narrative, Claire proposed, her voice a tremor of both hope and trepidation. Let us turn the pain into a legacy worth sharing. Her mother finally spoke, vulnerability etched on her face. Okay, but you must promise me to tread lightly, she replied, eyes shimmering with a mix of resignation and support. You're right. The stories must breathe. I just wish to guard you from the scars of their truth. With a deep breath, Claire nodded, bolstered by her mother's tentative agreement. As the contours of her quest transformed, a realization dawned. She was venturing forth not only to excavate the past but to rebuild the present, wielding her knowledge as both a shield and a sword. As they began strategizing which stories to explore first, Claire's mind raced with the implications of what lay ahead. Was she ready to face the darkness? With every discussion, every deliberation, she felt the pulse of something greater forming a connection not just to her ancestors but to her own identity. But as Claire steeled herself for the intimate truths yet to emerge, doubts lingered. Would she be able to wield this newfound knowledge wisely? Was she opening a Pandora's box of pain? The ledger, now filled with potential, lay before them, silently summoning them toward the unknown. Claire felt the air crackle with the possibilities of confrontation, ready to unveil the proud legacies entwined in the shadows. As they rose from the desk, Claire knew one thing for certain, the time for discovery had arrived, but what revelations awaited them? How would their family's past reflect on their futures? The journey had only just begun. As dawn broke, casting pale light through the window, Claire awoke with an intensity she hadn't previously felt. The day ahead held the promise of both discovery and disruption, two forces that would inevitably clash within her. Sitting at the breakfast table, she mirrored her mother's anxious expression. What's first? Claire asked, her fingers drumming against the table's surface, her excitement barely contained. The ledger, ripe with the potential of her family's buried narratives, pulsed in her mind. Yet, the weight of her mother's warnings loomed. Maybe we could start with Mary, her mother suggested hesitantly. She was a distant cousin, but her life it was difficult. A tremor laced her words, unease spilling into the space between them. Claire's stomach tightened with anticipation and fear. Tell me about her. An internal fire ignited as she sensed the gravitas of their conversation. She was no longer a passive listener, she was an active participant in reclaiming their history. Mary was married young, but her husband had ended sadly, her mother began, her voice quaking. Claire noted the way her mother's eyes clouded over, as if facing ghosts that had long resided in the shadows of their family lore. There were rumors about him, about what he did. What do you mean? Claire pressed gently, feeling a tug of empathy as she envisioned a life shrouded in silence. I was told he was abusive, her mother whispered. But no one discussed it. We talked around it, avoided the specifics like a minefield. A wave of realization washed over Claire, their family had become an elaborate tapestry woven with threads of unanswered questions and suppressed truths. And the story's haven just disappeared, Claire murmured, feeling the sharp edges of her mother's pain parallel her own desire for truth. They need to be brought out, no matter how harrowing. Yet, Claire recognized the risk embedded within her aspirations. A temptation to bury the revelations lurked within her, a familiar instinct steeped in her mother's anxious caution. The choice lay before her, to brave the uncomfortable and risk everything: reputation, relationships, and peace. Shouldering the task of unearthing their history felt both exhilarating and daunting. Claire decided to chase the thrill whatever the cost. She pushed aside her apprehensions. Adoption of Mary's story was not merely an act of research, it was a commitment to expanding her own understanding of resilience amid tragedy. "We can do this together," she said firmly, turning to her mother as determination coursed through her veins. Her mother's sigh wavered between relief and concern, but it was laced with a hint of acceptance. "All right. But promise me, no forcing their secrets from them. We must respect their memories." As they delved deeper into Mary's life, Claire unearthed letters and photographs that painted a vivid picture of a woman sold to wed in a world that cherished power over compassion. Each document unfurled layers of generational anguish, and Claire felt a strange kinship with Mary. It was as if the threads of their struggles had intertwined across the years. After hours of sifting through fragile artifacts, Claire was stunned. It dawned on her that Mary had managed to create a life that evidenced strength amid her pain. In her writings, Claire found whispered truths of resilience and survival, the very qualities she yearned to embody. Instead of sinking into despair, Mary had written poetry, expressing anguish in ways that bridged the chasm of loss. The transformation within Claire deepened. As she began to pen a reflection on Mary's legacy, fueled by connection and an unwavering desire to honor lost voices, she grappled with her own identity. Could she dare to embody both the pain of the past and the empowerment of its revelation? But in her exploration, the specter of her mother's fears lingered. Each discovery raised new questions. Was confronting the past worth the risk of familial fracture? Had she unwittingly invited conflict into what once felt secure? With the horizon of possibilities stretching before her, Claire felt the unsettling pulse of anticipation. She would forge on, no matter the challenge. The stories had begun to breathe, but what would unfold next? Would reclaiming these narratives shield her, or lay her bare beneath the weight of their truths? As night settled, Claire's resolve crystallized. The journey to honor her past was far from linear, full of complexities and shadows. But she had ignited a flame within herself. And the ledger? It now demanded action, turning from a passive remnant to an active path forward, threatening to unveil hidden legacies both empowering and daunting. The moment arrived, she would soon confront the essence of her family's pain. What other truths awaited? Would they destroy or liberate her? Claire's determination simmered like a pot on the verge of boiling over, each moment an invitation to confront deeper truths. The ledger lay spread open before her, a gateway into echoes of her ancestors' lives. Each letter, each photograph, felt almost alive, whispering secrets that had long lain dormant. As she sifted through the dusty remnants, Claire couldn't shake off the sensation that with each discovery, she was unearthing not just family history but fragments of her own identity. Who was she without the constraints of the past? The question haunted her, an uninvited guest shadowing her every thought. Her mother had been hesitant, but Claire was fueled by the connection she felt to Mary and the weight of generations unacknowledged. This sense of urgency pushed her to pursue leads that seemed like fleeting sparks amidst an expanse of darkness. They had made the decision together the day prior, but now, as the weight of the task set in, doubt teased at the edges of her resolve. What would Mary want? She whispered aloud, testing the echoes of her thoughts. She sifted through a bundle of letters, the delicate paper crumbling at the edges. The ink had faded but the emotions remained, charging her with a desire to bring these hidden struggles into the light. Mary's poetry, so expressive of her pain and survival, surged through Claire like a current of defiance. Driven by an impulse she didn't quite understand, Claire grabbed a pen and began jotting down her reflections. As the words flowed, so did memories, her mother's quiet tears at family gatherings, the hushed conversations that always seemed to bypass the heart of their history. Would her exploration pull those threads tighter, or would it unravel the fabric that had kept their family together? These revelations about Mary's life, including the details of her constrained existence, loomed large. During her research, Claire stumbled upon a grim aspect of history, the treatment of women during traumatic times, a subject that stirred an unsettling feeling within her. Was Mary's suffering an echo of a broader narrative about submissiveness, power, and survival? Her heart raced with a mix of fear and empathy as she grappled with the implications. Had Mary felt as exposed as Claire did at that moment, navigating treacherous waters to uncover truths that could shatter the facade of a carefully maintained family history? For weeks, Claire had been quietly rewriting her own story through Mary's words, but with that came the potential for her own demons to emerge. Suddenly, the sensation of being watched pressed on her shoulders, intertwining with her growing urgency. What if she wasn't just facing the dichotomy of liberation versus destruction? What if the act of uncovering these truths led to harsh judgments from others, especially her mother, who had wrapped herself tightly in quietude and avoidance? At what point did the pursuit of truth become a weapon against those she loved? Claire hesitated. The task was becoming less about the rightful reclamation of voices left distraught and more about an impending confrontation with her mother, and potentially with herself. That realization gripped her with fear. The very act she intended to liberate her family might instead reveal fractures she wasn't ready to face. Each sentence she wrote thrummed with both passion and dread. It was clear the emotional stakes had risen, entwining her desires for truth and connection with the potential fallout. If history had taught her anything, it was that the revelations did not operate in isolation. Each shared truth brought with it new expectations. Claire closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. It was time to decide whether she would press forward, branded by Mary's unyielding spirit, risking revelation over silence. Was she prepared for the inevitable rupture it might bring? The decision loomed heavily upon her, echoing in the stillness that blanketed the room. Confronting old wounds at the risk of new ones was a true test of her courage. Taking a deep breath, she opened her eyes. Ready to face the ledger again, determined to make the stories heard. But then, as she turned another fragile page, a handwritten note slipped out, startling her. It was addressed to Mary from someone named Elizabeth, and its final lines sent a shiver down Claire's spine. You must know the truth, but be prepared for those who may not want you to. What had she uncovered that could provoke such caution? The pulse of dread quickened once more. Claire now understood that not only her family's history was entwined with these truths but that her quest could awaken long-dormant tensions she wasn't ready to face. The room around her grew denser with the weight of the past, urging her to confront not just the story but to brace for the reckoning that was soon to come. What truths lay buried in the depths of her family lore that might shake her foundations? And would her pursuit for understanding lead to ultimate despair or a new dawn? Claire leaned back in her chair, heart racing as the reality of her discoveries converged with her mounting apprehension. The note from Elizabeth, a stranger yet intertwined in her family's history, echoed ominously in her mind. You must know the truth, but be prepared for those who may not want you to. It was evident, uncovering the past was spiraling into something far more complex than she'd anticipated. The revelation that her family could have concealed truths so pivotal hung heavy. But she had come too far to retreat now. She had set out to honor the stories of the women who came before her, and Mary, as well as Elizabeth, deserved her voice. The quandary remained, could she honor these legacies without dismantling the fragile connections to her family? Days passed in fervent preparation, each discovery fueling Claire's resolve. She contemplated her mother's earlier warnings, processing the delicate balance between truth and empathy. It wasn't enough to expose past horrors, she undertook the responsibility to frame them within a context that cultivated compassion and understanding. As she sifted through her research, the emotional landscape began to reshape itself. The shadows of trauma she identified in Mary's poetry were capable of unearthing resilience, too. Claire envisioned a narrative that intertwined strength with sorrow, a tapestry that brought the complexities of her family's legacy into focus rather than casting the figures involved into the abyss of blame. Sitting with her mother once more, the ledger between them felt less like a barrier and more like a bridge. "Mom, we can shape the narrative together," Claire urged, her voice steady. "Mary's story doesn't need to be just about suffering. We can reflect on her courage as well. It's part of who we are." Her mother's expression had softened, the lines of worry easing as she mulled over the potential of this new approach. If we can frame it that way, perhaps, she said slowly, a flicker of conviction igniting in her eyes. But we must also be honest about the pain. With their collaborative spirit blossoming, Claire realized she was not alone in this endeavor. They were forging an alliance to reclaim the narratives hidden in their lineage, transforming fear into partnership and vulnerability into strength. This partnership wholly reinvigorated Claire's focus. Her article began to take shape as a reflection of legacy, a balance between the disturbing truths and the unyielding spirit of resilience. She merged Mary's letters with her mother's insights, finding ways to weave in the nuances of their shared history without erasing its harsh realities. The day of publication arrived with palpable tension, doubt swarming as she hovered over the "Publish" button. Inevitably, she would have to face the scrutiny not only of the academic community but of her family. Yet, she had come to understand that illuminating these hidden shadows could ease some of the pain they carried. With a final deep breath, Claire clicked the button and released her article into the world. The echo of her heartbeat filled the silence that wrapped around her, carrying both trepidation and exhilaration. The narrative was alive, woven with the voices of the past. Then came the reactions. Initially, a flood of responses emerged, some lauding the courage of unveiling such multifaceted history, while others echoed her mother's fears. Claire braced herself as family members tried to grapple with the weight of her revelations, their reactions spanning from pride to indignation. In the weeks that followed, Claire faced intense scrutiny but also validation. Her work transcended academic borders, reaching everyday people who had connections to legacies woven with discord and resilience. The conversations ignited by her article fostered not only healing but reconciliation among differing perspectives. Through it all, her relationship with her mother flourished. They collaborated closely, tackling the responses together as they sought truths in family gatherings and discussions that had been avoided for years. Claire realized the conversations they engaged in offered a kind of catharsis, peeling away layers of misunderstanding and forging connections anew. Claire encountered validation beyond just family ties, she received recognition in the academic community. Her article, richly layered with narratives that stemmed from both history and heart, was invited for presentation at a prestigious conference. Standing in front of a diverse audience, she articulated the complexities of her ancestors' experiences, their hardships and resilience unflinchingly expressed, drawn from the delicate balance of truth and compassion her mother had taught her. In that moment, Claire stood before her peers, armed not only with academic credence but also a newfound confidence in her voice. She had traversed the vulnerable landscape of her family's history, embracing the painful but necessary work of healing and connection. As applause rang in her ears, she smiled knowingly. This journey had not just been about unveiling family secrets but redefining her own identity in the process. Claire felt empowered, her once shadowed self now illuminating the path not only for her family but for others who opposed silence. The weight of her ancestors' stories felt lighter. She had written them into existence, breaking cycles of silence and paving a way for future inquiries beyond her own. Claire emerged from this odyssey transformed, wielding her voice with purpose. The past no longer dictated her, but rather connected her, enriching the journey ahead. She glanced out into the audience, exchanging knowing looks with her mother amongst the crowd. The moment was transcendent, not merely in triumph but also in the profound understanding that embracing truth did not tear families apart, it could tether their collective strength into a legacy worth cherishing. The road ahead glimmered with promise, a path she was eager to explore, fully aware that she had become the custodian of her family's legacy, ready to uncover its truths while honoring its humanity. In this newfound perspective, Claire conquered not just the ghosts of her past but emerged as a pioneer for others yearning to discover their narratives amidst the chaos of history. The stories of women like Mary of struggle, pain, and ultimately survival beckoned brighter days, radiating strength in a future Claire was ready to embrace. And as she stepped off the conference stage, she whispered quietly to herself, a promise for both her past and future: never again shall I hide. This is only the beginning. To everyone reading this, now is your moment to step forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, because true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Don't wait even one more second to share.